All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of It's Brewing at McEwen, a USF Baseball podcast. I'm your host, Mark Giardino, and I'm here today, February 9th, 2026, only 4 days away from opening day, with two of my co-hosts, Matthew and John. And today we have a special guest joining us. He's entering his second year as the head coach of USF Baseball, and he's coming off of a debut season in which his Bulls finished in third place in the AAC standings. That is none other than Coach Mitch Hannes. Coach, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Going good, guys. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah, it's been a little while. Last time we talked to you on the show was I think before the AAC tournament in Clearwater, and that was an entertaining tournament. Had some good success there. Made a little run. One thing that we just had on the list for today was, how was that experience? That was your first time coaching a AAC tournament in Clearwater.
It was, the setup was very similar to what I was used to. We had that for several years in the valley with the two pods and the two sides. So familiar with that, and now that's changed. We're going to a new format, um, but I think the reality is you get a feel. It's like everything else. Somebody seems to always get hot in that tournament. Usually a team you don't expect. We saw East Carolina that last weekend of the season, and they certainly got hot at the right time.
I know you beat them in the series, I think, leading into that, and then they won the tournament. So I was not aware of the format changing. Do you know what that exactly that's going to entail?
I think the reality of the change is that there's more protection for the top of the conference. So one and two with first round buys.
Okay.
I think it's what a lot of leagues have gone to.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's actually smart and probably will increase our chances there of maybe multiple at-large bids, protecting that RPI. So
Sure.
yeah. But John, I'll let you kick it to the next thing here on our intro section. B, I think.
Sorry about that. Couldn't get unmuted. It seems like a common trend with just to kind of piggyback on that last thing y'all were talking about. Even in the pros, you're seeing a lot of fan complaints where the top teams in the postseason weren't getting the protection, and I don't know if that's specific to baseball as a sport because of just, the amount of variability that can come in the end result, but it's definitely an interesting concept to look into. So as far as the staff goes, you got your first season behind you. Kind of how is your gut check feeling going into this season? We're days away from opening day. You've been at the helm now for over a year. You've got to feel more at home, more at ease this off season. You have full off season to yourself. So how are you feeling about the staff? What can you tell us about just kind of that initial gut check reaction before seeing it play out?
Are you talking about our coaching staff or our pitching staff?
I'm sorry, the entire roster.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the team?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think, I think from my standpoint, you never know what to expect on Friday night opening weekend. Um, I think the reality is that this group has busted their tail for months in preparation for Friday night, and not just Friday night, but obviously the entire season. And I like where we're at. I feel like, I said to a few of the coaches the other day, I feel like we were able to put in a lot more this year. When you start from ground zero, it's kind of like any offense and any defensive set, whether it be football or basketball or baseball, or it just seemed like we were able to gain a lot more ground and put a lot of stuff in that maybe we didn't quite get to last year. Um, from a strategic standpoint, of course. But I like the work these guys have given us. I mean, I think in terms of their preparation for the season, we couldn't have asked for more. I mean, we always ask for more skill, right? You always ask for uh, guys to improve quicker. But it is what it is from that standpoint. And then after you get to that point, I just told the team the other day, it's like walking up to the top of a cliff and freebasing off that, diving off. I mean, we do everything we can to get to the top, and then they dive off, and we see if we fly or we hit the daggone ground. Um, and that's kind of where we're at. I feel better. We brought up the tournament a few minutes ago. The price that we paid to get to third place last year going into the tournament with our pitching was a heavy price. We certainly did not get an opportunity to give Corey Braun um, an off weekend or just a light weekend. We had to ride him very hard all year, and at the end he was dead. I mean, he paid for it, and so the first game of the tournament was really tough, knowing that he was wearing down, down the stretch. But so I think from the standpoint of having a deeper staff and being able to overcome maybe an injury here, or a guy misses a start here with tightness in his bicep or something that could occur throughout the year. That's comforting going in. Um, I also like the depth of our team at every position. I just feel like, today was one of our big personnel meetings talking about Friday night and where we're at with everything. And beyond 9 starters, you're talking about 16 to 18 guys in the conversation. So I think that's where we've improved as well. And I think now moving forward, we use the fall scrimmages to play a lot of our young guys. If you watch those, you notice we didn't play returners a lot. We played young guys and new guys quite a bit just to get a feel of them and let them play the bulk of those innings. We had a couple freshmen that played 10 of those 14 innings, on both those outings. So we like a few of those guys have really come a long way as well. So I think from where we were last year, we ended up having a solid front nine and about 3 or 4 deep on the mound. I feel like where we get into this year, we can conceivably run 16 to 18 guys out there and probably nobody really notice that there's a drop off. And I think we're much closer to getting into that 8 to 10 conversation that you have to survive a college baseball season with your pitching staff.
That makes a lot of sense. Um, Matt, did you want to jump in as well?
Yeah. So the next thing we want to talk about, and this is a little bit more on a personal level. You spent a lot of time coaching in the state of Indiana, obviously at Indiana State, only about an hour and a half away from the University of Indiana. What was it like for you to see the University of Indiana win the college football playoff national championship? And are you a fan of IU at all?
Um, I would be lying if I said I'm happy for Hoosier Nation. Um, if you were 45 minutes away from there, I can't tell you how tired I got of driving out on the interstate or even in our hometown of Terre Haute and seeing the Indiana University license plates, or the Purdue license plates, or here the Florida license plates, or the Florida State license plates, or the Miami license plates. Um, I was, you had to root for what Signetti was able to do. Great respect for what he was able to do, but 45 minutes from Indiana, we just could never really root for those guys.
It makes sense, especially I know you guys have a really good basketball team or you guys had a good basketball team at Indiana State too, so probably a big rivalry there.
Yeah, probably similar to how you guys feel about, if Miami would have won it all. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah,
you would have felt about
no,
that.
I would have liked it.
You know how I felt then. So
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. And it's an interesting analogy you made too with the in Florida where you see, the programs I guess that have been around longer with football, have that kind of established base. So it does get a little annoying, but it also is a little chip on the shoulder of a USF or an Indiana State. Makes it a little more sweet when you do play them and beat them. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into this some questions about the schedule at the end too. And I noticed we have some good matchups with some Florida schools. We can maybe talk about that for a little bit. But another thing I wanted to ask you, moving on to our next segment here, just kind of recapping the off season a little bit before we get into some of the stuff about the team. But recruiting this off season compared to the prior one, how much did it help already being here and not having to scramble to put together a roster and how did that help you out?
It's been interesting because I feel like the portal, the 2 years of the portal here, where it's gotten heavier for baseball, have been completely different years. Um, in terms of how players operated in the portal. You know, the previous year, we were coming in and players were trying to land, and they wanted to get it done quickly. The last go around with the portal, it's like a lot of guys wanted to start their visits all over, like high school where you want to take 3 or 4 visits. And so, and that, what that did was it was a little slower moving, um, portal this go around. And the other thing that was different this last go around was that it cost a lot more to get in the game. So we kind of had to let the first wave come and go, um, just because of the money that they were commanding. When you start talking about starting pitchers commanding 400,000 in the portal, um, there are only certain schools that are going to be able to pay that. So that had to kind of wash out and get to a point that we were on a level ground trying to fight for a few guys, down the stretch and get them in here. So, but it didn't. I think the fact that the NCAA is still kind of all over the place with the numbers, and we did finally get the 34, but we have designated student athletes or DSAs, which you can designate, which allow you to carry more than 34. So it's still a little confusing. So it's still pretty fluid. We react day to day to what's coming down from the NCAA and how we're going to operate moving forward. And that's had quite an impact on recruiting. Um, and then continuing to, I still feel like we really like the guys that we brought in here. We really like the freshman class. Um, those guys are good looking young players that are going to have really good careers. Um, I'm not going to get into names tonight with you, who, what, when and where, but you could easily see 2 to 3 freshmen in our lineup here and there, that have come a long way. I won't say they'll be in their opening night, but certainly they're going to get their opportunities. So I think if you look at the breakdown, we had 14 returners and I believe 11 freshmen, and then 16 transfers. But of those 16, 6 or so were junior college guys. So 10 true transfers from 4-year. That's probably going to be where we're at moving forward. That 8 to 10 number is probably with what we have financially right now. It's probably our landing spot, and we've got another good class coming in behind these guys that we're very excited about. So I think we still have to get freshmen that are ready to play or they're a year away.
Mm.
And so we've really set our sights on those guys. If they're a program, in the past, we obviously had a walk-on program. If they're 2, 3 years away, you just can't take them right now.
Right.
You're better for them to go to junior college. So that's probably the only thing to me that's changing in the recruiting. It's not that we're here so much. It's just the pace of it year to year.
Okay.
And as the larger schools become more and more involved in that portal window, which you're watching, they're taking fewer and fewer freshmen.
Right.
I think that portal thing is going to continue to move, kind of from top to bottom in terms of who has the money and who's waiting for some fruit to fall down the tree.
Right. It makes a
I
lot
got
of
a quick
sense. Oh,
I
go
got
ahead,
a
man.
quick follow up on that. with that focus of these, Power Four conference teams really looking to get as many transfers as possible, have you seen an opportunity where it may be easier to get blue chip high school recruits to come in and sign?
Yeah, I think that's when we talked about where we're going to move in this climate, that's a piece that absolutely we said if those guys want to plug and play, there are going to be a lot of really good players, especially around Tampa. There's a lot of really good players. Um, so currently, they'll climb in the Power Four, especially the better ones. They're going after the blue chip high school guys, and signing those guys. And obviously, that's kind of a tough ground too, because the other thing that we deal with in baseball that no one else has to deal with is the draft.
Hmm.
So as you start watching as the year goes here, you're going to see some schools have to go out and add some guys late, um, because they're gonna realize that some of their signees are playing too well and probably going to go in the top 3 or 4 rounds.
Right.
Um, and I don't think baseball is at a place yet where they're going to be able to buy guys from the top end of the draft, like you're
No,
hearing in some other sports.
I don't think so. Not yet. Because that top of the draft money is pretty big.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, one of the numbers you kind of mentioned earlier, like an established starting pitcher maybe commanding six figures or more now. That is, that's new. That's really a new thing that kind of is following football and basketball. And it's interesting that you say that because my follow-up basically to what you were saying is when I actually was kind of analyzing your incoming transfers, one thing I noticed was you brought in guys who have like a good maybe profile, like in terms of like let's say pitcher with a certain velocity profile, spin rate profile. Maybe 2 years ago they were like a top 50 high school recruit or something, but they may not necessarily have had the opportunity yet in college to show that. So they're not to be able to jump in the portal and say, "Hey, give me 400," because they haven't had those statistics yet.
Yes.
So one guy that comes to mind when I think of that is the guy from Georgia, Sutton.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that kind of like something that is almost by design to be like, hey, we want to get guys of that caliber, but we also have to know that we have to be realistic with what we can get in the portal.
I think that's part of it. I think the other thing, we Sutton has obviously had a strong relationship with Coach Kangas even prior to Georgia. Um, so I think we brought a lot of guys on visits this year, um, and we got told no a lot with the idea that in a year, those no's may be looking for a school.
Right.
And so I think what we're trying to do is do a really good job of at least putting some roots down with some of those guys that we probably had a small chance. They're getting recruited by SEC, ACC,
Right.
um, but we're still going to bring them in. We're still going to wine and dine them. We're still going to make our pitch. And if we don't get them, we have a relationship established that in a year, if things change in their world, we have an opportunity. So that's kind of our, going after those blue chip kids and those high level kids. Um, and getting some of them in the door, and the ones you lose, you say, I don't know if they play where they're going this year.
Right.
Um, so it is a very different climate in college athletics right now.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. Very interesting. John, I'll let you kick it to the next bullet there under our off-season recap. Just
Yes.
regarding.
Just to keep it on the pitching topic, or kind of, we had three pitchers drafted in the offseason. We had a few other key arms leave via transfer or graduating. Um, it kind of leaves a pretty big void in terms of roster spots to fill. I think 13 of our 18 pitching spots are going to be new arms coming in for us this season. So how do you kind of prioritizing retooling that rotation and kind of like you said, adding depth where you saw fit, in terms of long-term success for the season.
Sure. I think our struggles last year, we certainly didn't have some arms step forward in the sense of possibly becoming high level starters at South Florida. I think the reality for all of us is can that pitcher get three times through the order? And to be able to do that, you better have more than just a sequence, on the mound. So I felt like even though we possibly could have returned some guys, I felt like we had to do a better job of having guys that can give us more than just an inning, one time through the order. We have to have relievers that can recover. If you can relieve 2 weekends and you're out 2 weekends, it's not you're not going to survive at this level. So I think it was the tough thing was to go out and find some matchups. I can't tell you how many times I sat in the dugout last year and just wished that we had a left-handed breaking ball down there in the bullpen, or you just wish you had a right-handed slider that a guy can land on command down there in that bullpen. So I think as we started to put this together and look at guys, we needed about 5 or 6 guys that are capable of going three times through the order. We needed relievers with rubber arms that can command every game for a couple of hitters, especially in tough spots where you need that right-hand slider, you need the left-handed breaking ball. And then we have to have some guys that stand on the back end that can pound the zone and have the slow heartbeat. And that was the task. I think we'll see, ultimately what kind of job we've done with that. But I think all of these guys are proven, to get here. Even the young guys, we got a kid like Michael Sine who's thrown a lot of innings and he's thrown a lot of games and thrown internationally, as well for Team Czechoslovakia. And so that's the big piece moving forward. So as the staff is being retooled, we just need to get a lot deeper. And I said it today in our coaches meeting. I really like, you're going to get to know a couple names because you might see them every game. I just like their ability to bounce back and throw baseball every day. And that's really when you start talking about pitching in this era. What kind of stuff does a young person have, and if they're going to be a reliever for us, how often can we use them? Durability and rubber arms are hard to find. And if you look at the teams in our league, UTSA, gosh, they threw the same 5 guys all year.
Yeah.
The one kid, the reliever, it seemed like he threw 2 games a weekend, in relief. So that's kind of, I think that's really what we're looking for in this era. We don't want to hurt guys or overuse them, but we certainly have to have guys that can throw Friday and Sunday on those weekends.
It's interesting to hear you say that because if you rewind to about a year ago when we talked prior to last season starting, I would say that your stance hasn't changed much in terms of what you're looking for profile wise. And but I guess retooling would be kind of the best word to use for for filling in the void on that rotation.
Well, and I think it goes back to, hiring Daniel Schlereth and
Yeah.
guys that understand at the highest level what a pitching staff has to ultimately look like and how to get the most out of your guys. I think in this era where we get so caught up in velocity, we forget that you have to be able to pitch and you have to be able to recover. That's just the reality. Even the starters, we have to trust that when they throw on Friday, they're busting their rear ends all through the week to maintain where they're at physically, so they're ready for next Friday. And that's a big piece. We recently, I brought in a guy that pitched for us at Indiana State as our GA, Lane Miller, and we recently added Dave Island, who was he was an old bull and big league pitching coach for 13 seasons. Um, we've for a lot of years in baseball, we've had all these coaches, but always a pitching coach designated for 20 guys. So I feel like we're adapting as well, and we have three guys with those pitchers every day, which I think is really important in this era that we're in. And they're really diving down in those roles and what guys need to be able to do. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me with the pitching moving forward. And then, beyond all that, it's just finding guys that want to go out there and pitch for us, and I think being unselfish and laying it on the line and wanting to pitch for the Bulls and wanting to win and all of those things. You have to really search that out in recruiting, especially in this era that we're in.
Right.
Playing for the guys on your island. Some things never change, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to jump in there too. Follow up on same theme as what John asked. He kind of asked about what you were looking for to retool your pitching staff, but you also lost some impact bats. You lose Sebastian Greco amongst others, Hakame in the portal,
No deal.
Brodeo Mayo. So when you were looking to retool your position player group, was it more looking for specific traits of certain players that you're like, we need to at least have this or that? What was your approach to just retooling and also maybe looking at what you already had?
Sure. I think, and you guys know this, I think if there was an area that we went into last year that we felt a little concerned was shortstop. And then Brett Key Lowry ended up having a great year for us at shortstop, played very well defensively for us. Um, and I think as we set down the off season, I think the reality, guys, is you start looking at this becoming somewhat of a business and saying, okay, we got to go get new guys, we got to retool, but we got to be smart with our money. I mean, we don't have an endless supply, and we just can't have guys on our roster that can play second base only. We just can't have guys on our roster that can play left field only. We've got to have versatile athletes that can move around the field, um, that you feel good about. And I think last year, if there was anything that we felt constricted at times, I just don't know that our interior defense early in the year was very good. It seemed like we had to really kind of retool that as the year went. From a range standpoint, we didn't range a lot early on, and we had some balls squeak through that. On the opposite end of that, when you had Mayo and Pruitt run around the outfield with Rodell, I felt like our outfield defense was very solid. So I felt like the mix of being able to defend at a high level and have enough hitters to have a 9-man lineup is really important in this era. You just can't go 6 hitters deep, and guys get cold and your 7, 8, and 9 are not swinging it, because you're basically giving the other team 3 innings a night. If you figure those guys all get 3 at bats, if we don't have enough down there in the bottom of that order, we're playing a 6-inning game offensively.
Right.
So we really want to make sure that our lineup is getting extended with guys who can also defend at this level.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And it's no secret that the ball flies out to right in our park. I mean, we've got to continue to get left-handers who can pull the ball toward that foul pole over there. And I think that's an important thing. I just didn't feel like we had enough of those guys. Obviously, if you saw UCF come into our park and have a lineup that looked like what we should try and put on the field as we keep moving forward with all this. They got 4 or 5 lefties with some pull side power, and they were hard on us that weekend.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, Matt, I'll let you kick it to the last thing there in the off-season section.
Yeah, so you've had a full fall camp as well as now you're wrapping up the spring camp. What were some of the main things you emphasized working on with your team this off season?
Um, Gosh, Matt, we don't sleep at night trying to come up with things to throw at these guys. Um, I think the one thing, if I go to our coaching staff for a minute. The one thing about our staff is that we have very good teachers of the game. And we've actually, when I talked about being able to take additional steps, we were actually able to slow down a little more this fall and teach. And whether it be Brian Peters or Blake Kangas or Jordan Schaefer, on the offensive side, and I already mentioned the guys on the pitching side. It just seems like we were able to gain more ground with that. And for a lot of people thinking about that, I mean, they don't get excited when you talk about a fly ball into left field where you're working on a double tag or a double steal where the guy at first base is running a delay based on where the catcher throws the ball. When you start talking about a lot of the little things that win games, they really don't show up. You don't notice it that much. You just see a play happen, but something led to that, along the way. So I think being able to really dig down with our guys has been something that's been a positive. I think the other thing, I think sometimes they feel like we're punishing them. And the reality is, when you quit training like the underdog, you're going to get your ass beat. If you think you're the best person in the equation every time, you're going to get kicked. And for guys to show up every day and put themselves at least mentally into, hey, I'm not the best player today. I'm going against a guy that's throwing 94 and he's throwing a slider and a change and locating. And I got to get in that. I got to get in off that machine down there in the cages and I got to battle my ass off. And I think those are the important things. That's probably the most important ground that you make with guys is making them understand that. And it's all season. We've all watched the Michael Jordan stuff, and you watch the best athletes in the world who became what we know of them now, and they were just elite, but they trained like they were the worst player in the world. And that's really what the fall is to me. It's going out there and saying, okay, we're the bottom feeders. Let's go to work and prepare for the best team that might walk in here today, as opposed to thinking we're the best and let's
But no, that
prepare
makes a
for
lot
it.
of sense. That makes a lot of
But
sense, especially with the emphasis on really taking care of the small things that, it might not look like a lot in camp and practice, but those small things can add up to two, three, four wins throughout the season, and that's the difference between, getting a bye in the tournament and not.
last year when we had this conversation, you guys remember we talked about pace. We had to learn to work. We had to get in shape, the best shape of our life, and understand that, hey, if I'm an infielder, I got to be able to complete 100 to 150 plays a day. And you think about that, and you get those ground balls, you get 150 ground balls, and you make 150 throws. That's a good day, and that's just a part of your practice, right? And then I think outfielders running down balls, and I think the graduation from pace to just being able to go day by day by day and then dig down and improve on some other things after learning the pace at which you have to work to become really good at this. Matt's always the one that freezes, isn't he?
Matt, he is frozen.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll give him a chance to get back. Matt, if you still hear us, you could try to leave and come back or whatever you got to do. But I think he's taking me up on that. All right, but no, that makes a lot of sense. I like the fact that, and it makes sense too with your second year here, with some continuity with your coaches and a little bit of continuity with some players. It makes sense that you could actually progress on some things from the prior season. Makes a lot of sense. One thing we wanted to kick it to, just some things about this year's team. And I know you mentioned you're not going to get too much into names, but we'll try to pry what we can. Uh, but what I wanted to ask you was, have you settled on a starting pitching rotation for opening weekend at least, or is there anything that you've kind of set upon yet? Or if you don't
No,
want, okay.
no, we haven't. We talked a lot today. I think we're really close. And I told our coaches when we were in our meeting today that we'll try to finalize it hopefully tomorrow. because we certainly want our team to know before anyone else knows. And
Makes
same
sense.
thing with, we have people on the outside asking our rotation, those type things. But
Right.
we hope, obviously we have to by tomorrow because of side sessions and all that have to occur on Tuesday for a Friday starter and that type thing. But we're close, but certainly haven't finalized it completely yet.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess, knowing we can't name positions for rotation yet. There was a few interesting arms that I got opportunity to see when I was there in the fall. Um, One, and it was also mentioned in the Division One baseball article, and there were the day that I came out in the fall, there was a lot of scouts there, which was new for me to see at a fall practice. But they mostly were there that day, I think, to see Edwin Alicea, who's had a good track record there at Division Two Nova Southeastern. How has he progressed since the fall? Because I saw him pitching well in the fall. The scouts that I sat near, they were, enjoying watching him pitch. Has he progressed pretty well?
Yeah, he's had a solid fall and early spring, for sure, and he's definitely a guy in the mix in our rotation. And um, as to what day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all that, and how we line up, we haven't completely decided on. But he's a guy that's been good for the most part, and looking forward to him having a good year for us.
Okay. And one other arm I wanted to ask you about because I saw him that day, and he probably had the highest velocity of any pitcher that day that I saw him. However, he was struggling on that day to command pitches in the strike zone. That was the big JUCO transfer, Landon O'Donnell.
Yeah,
Has he progressed with his control, or is it still kind of a work
yeah.
in progress?
No, he's come a long way. We're really pleased with where Landon's at. He's from probably where you saw him the day with the command to where he's at now are night and day. So really, really pleased with his progress.
That's
That's
awesome.
that's the last name I'm giving you though.
That's cool. No, that's cool. I appreciate that. And then, we I guess we kind of talked about the starting lineup, well, and not the starting lineup, but the position player group and some of the traits of people that you brought in that you were looking for. Left-handed power. Um, I won't ask you to talk too much about this individual if you don't want to, but there was one guy whose stats really jumped out from his transfer portal kind of records. The Division Two shortstop with the 68 steals last year. Can you just talk a little bit about Jevin Relaford, if you can? If not, it's all right. Just what he's done for you in practice.
No, Jevons worked hard. Obviously, uh, 68 steals. He has good speed. He has really good instincts. And I think he's a guy that um, obviously again another guy that we're looking forward to him having a really good year. Um, I think the reality of the position player stuff, we don't get the luxury where we're at to have guys go to A ball and play one guy in low A and one in high A and figure out. We have to decide Friday night, which is the grouping that we send out there. And I mentioned to you guys, we've talked about 16, 18 guys today that, man, you know, that's a lot of guys. And even beyond that, when you discuss the other guys, you say, gosh, this guy has this tool, this guy has this. So you guys, you probably saw us in a more um, static lineup last year. We put it together and we stayed with it. Um, I think you'll probably see us use the weekend, the midweek, the following weekend to really take a look at a little more of our roster depth as
Yeah,
opposed to just locking into a particular lineup.
yeah,
Even when I ask our coaches to put together their opening day lineup, we have a lot of discrepancy there. You get past three or four of the same names and you got lineups that look completely different. So that's a good thing and a bad thing.
yeah. No, that
The,
makes sense.
I've got to write a lineup out Friday night. A good thing in that we have so many guys in the conversation.
Makes sense. Matt and John, I'll give you guys the last couple segments there. I'll kind of wrap up this segment with this. So without getting into names at all, there's one recurring theme that I did see when I read some articles from D1 Baseball is something that you as a manager didn't really do a lot last year, but I saw the word platooning kind of mentioned a little bit. Maybe you like two guys at one position and you may actually, throw the lefty out there one day, righty out there the other day. Is that something that you might want to do this year a little more than last year, or how's that looking?
Yeah, I think it comes down to if you have, let's say, five or six lefties in your lineup, and all of a sudden you see a team go from a righty to a lefty, and your lefties get chopped. I mean, you've got to say, man, we've got to be a little better against left-hand pitching, so you may add some righties in there. So I think there's definitely more of you may see us play a little more of the in game, where we feel like we have the ability. If you want to move on the mound, we feel like we can move with our position, and we can adapt and adjust as the game goes. So I don't feel like we're in a place where if we got a guy hitting 100 against left-hand pitchers that we have to stay when they bring a lefty. Um, I want to be smart about it. I want to make sure, some guys are notorious slow starters.
Mhm.
To think guys are going to walk out there Friday night in the first game and all nine guys are going to hit is some guys it takes them 20, 30 at bats before they really settle in.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that too
Yeah.
to be cognizant of.
Yeah, that's a fine line that you got to walk. Big balance, that balancing act there, because a great example of what you're talking about is last season, Lance Triple got off to a slow start,
Mhm.
and then he ended up being one of your best hitters down the stretch. So it's
Yeah.
like, if you were taking him out too much, and maybe he wouldn't have got hot in the end. So
Yeah.
that's why you get paid big bucks, coach. Uh,
Well, it's really hard when you got a lot of guys neck and neck and uh, equal attitudes and all of that going on. So it'll work itself out. It always
sure.
does. I just think we have to make sure that we find the right moments to create opportunity for guys and give them a chance to get out there and play.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And this next one of these last segments here is kind of related to that, and I'll kick it to John here in a moment. But one thing I noticed about the schedule, you have a couple like like a midweek where it's like two midweeks in a row. But I'll kick it to John here if you want
Sure.
to share that first point under the upcoming schedule segment, John.
So we've got a home series opening up against Illinois, who are led by Coach Dan Hartlett, who enters his 21st. Sorry, got a cat falling on my lap. 21st season as our head coach. He's got a strong track record with five NCAA regional appearances, most recently in 2024. That's another prominent Big Ten opponent that we're opening up against with a head coach who's got some pull in college baseball. So, what can you say about that matchup and about him as a coach and an individual?
Well, he's a great coach and a great person that I've known for a long, long time, and um, I know, similar to Iowa last year, I know when this first weekend comes and goes, they will have exposed some things that we need to shore up. I think in a lot of these, you want to play an opponent that is going to basically show you a couple things that you better get to work on quickly. So you've got to be exposed. And I think the other thing, North Dakota State coming off of that was a regional team last year and great history and a lot of good players, a lot of guys in professional baseball, and they do a really, really great job. And I think, you probably don't want to play a double midweek, right off of that weekend. But I kind of have started doing that more as I've gotten a little older because it forces me to use our entire pitching staff.
I like that.
And I think, you
Interesting.
tend as a head coach, you tend to run guys out there that you already trust as much as you can in a season. And if you're not careful, you don't develop the depth necessary to survive a season. So it forces me to run guys out there that we don't have history with and we don't have trust yet and give them a chance to earn that. early on. So by the time the weekend comes and goes and the 2 midweeks, you guys will know every pitcher on our roster. And then you can talk about them and I don't have to.
I love that. I love that. We will be doing plenty of talking, so you don't gotta worry about that. Nice.
Hey, so we're opening up against Illinois. This is kind of just bear with me. You said we need players that can play multiple positions, yeah? Well, we all loved Ben Zobrist growing up, for the Tampa Bay Rays. I did a little bit of research during the show here. He did go to Eureka High School, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away from Champaign, Illinois, where the U of is at. So if you can give us a little bit of a scouting report on the junior and senior class coming out of Eureka, I think we would be in good shape.
Yeah, good luck on that one. You've got me there.
Yeah, for sure. And Matt, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, so I remember last year when we talked about the schedule, a lot of the non-conference games, they were kind of already baked into your schedule for last season. How much influence were you able to have on this non-conference schedule, and what was some of the mindset behind some of the teams that you scheduled?
I think it was, for the most part, we had a lot of say in it. Obviously, we had some home and homes that we had to honor. Georgia Southern is one of those that we had a 2-year deal, go up there a year and then they come here. Um, and I think the other thing is just, looking at it. Um, I know next year, not this year, but next year we finally have Florida State back on there twice. Um, we have Miami on there next year coming here as opposed to going there. Um, so I think as you see us go, you'll see that schedule and those midweeks kind of continue to elevate. Um, I know also next year we go play at Southern Miss early in the season, tough road series that you'll probably start to see us rather than stay at home. The first month you'll start to see us try to take our guys into some hostile environments. So they get a quick dose of that. Again, that's all part of that pre-conference getting exposed. So I would say it was 50-50 this year and what was there and what we added to it. And next year, you'll see us on the road a few more series than probably we were this year.
That's pretty exciting. Definitely looking forward to seeing our Bulls take on Hattiesburg. That'll be exciting.
Yeah, that'll be a great trip. We have them there in 27. I think they come here in 29. So
Nice.
it's a home and home series.
Nice. Yeah, that's fun. Like you're gonna get to the point next year where seems like you'll have full control of the non-conference schedule, and that's interesting because there's a lot of like strategy behind that, especially nowadays with the RPI and trying to position yourself with that. One built-in advantage I think we do have as a Florida school is it's easy to get high RPI midweek opponents.
Yeah.
Whereas I would imagine when you were with Indiana State, it may have been a little harder to find local teams that were boosting your RPI, but you still pulled it off somehow. So, yeah, how does being in Florida kind of impact how you schedule?
Well, I think the reality is, probably the midweeks in Florida is tough as anywhere you go play.
Yeah,
Stetson had a great club last year. Florida Gulf Coast is always good.
yeah,
Bethune-Cookman's, and I see their name mentioned a lot in a lot of the preseason stuff.
yeah.
Uh, they're just nowhere. You're not going to find an easy W anywhere.
No.
And I think you're talking about talented teams. You're talking about deep teams. You're talking about well-coached teams. So the midweek is whether Jacksonville, North Florida, wherever you pick to go, you better strap it on.
Absolutely.
And that's probably, a little different. I think what's a little different about that is you could catch some teams right um, in the Midwest. You could catch some teams that might have gone into Nebraska for a weekend and um, use a lot of your pitching. Been one of those weekends with the wind blowing out and you run through a lot of guys. And by the time you see them on Tuesday, they don't have anything left.
Mm.
we don't deal with that much down here where the wind affects the game to the point that and everybody's got pitching depth, and I think that's the biggest difference I see in Florida with all the midweeks. It just seems to me that the pitching depth is better. Um, even if you look at FIU and you look at all of those teams, I mean, gosh, I sat there on the side last year and a few of those midweeks saying, holy cow, can we get some guys that throw the damn thing like this?
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think as long as you look at these teams that are winning their conferences and playing in regionals, it's going to continue to be very good in terms of the midweeks.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. My last thing on the schedule here is, did you pick the Columbia series or was that already set?
No, we actually picked that. We had someone scratch on us late,
Oh, okay.
which is the other fun thing about scheduling. Um,
Huh.
sometimes you end up having to really fight to get a series because someone drops you at the 11th hour.
Mm. That's crazy
And
that some school would not want to come play in Tampa, Florida in February or March. But
well,
hey,
it's kind of it's interesting until you get a signed contract.
yeah,
A lot of those guys keep looking for a better date.
yeah, I see.
They look for a prettier date. So they found a prettier date than us and kicked us to the curb.
Interesting. Well, hey, Columbia is a nice late addition. I mean, for my research, they were in the NCAA tournament last year, and
Our guys, our guys, and you guys will be too. You'll be shocked at how good Columbia is.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, I think they
um,
may have even won a game or two in the regional
yeah,
last year. They
their
were
pitching was very, very good.
okay.
They had a good
Do you have any
team.
idea what's behind that? Is it like a sort of good coaching staff there, or is it just what you know anything about them?
No, not a ton yet.
That's
I'm
down
still
the
learning
road.
I'm still learning how to spell Illinois, let alone
Yes,
Columbia.
that's true. That's
Um,
true.
but obviously, when you see that, the first thing that jumps to my mind is development. Obviously, someone's doing a great job developing in-house
Mhm.
because there's certainly like a lot of us that don't get the high level blue chip guys, and you have to really work and develop. Somebody's doing a really good job.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, my last question for you before we sign off for the night. First of all, just thank you for joining us. We really enjoy when you jump on the show. Any final message that you have for Bulls fans as opening day approaches and before we head out?
Well, we say to the guys all the time, make sure the people who come into our stadium really value the ticket and what they paid for it because of the way we play the game and what we represent. And I think I hope they appreciate and are proud of the way that our guys compete and the way they handle themselves. And that's something we talk a lot about. And I think you're going to see a very scrappy group of guys get out there and get after it, but play the game with a lot of respect.
Awesome. Well, we all can't wait to see it.
All
And
right, man.
also, Coach, my brother and my dad and I, we got premium seats behind home plate this year, so we're really gonna give it to opposing teams.
You might be too close. You might be close enough to hear me. That could be a bad seat.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks again. We can't wait to see it in action in a few days.
Okay, guys. Look forward to seeing you out there.
Cool. Yes.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks,
Take
Bye.
guys.
See you
care.
Thank
later,
you.
Coach. Thank you.